What's up, humans? Welcome back to the Human Music Podcast. This is episode 89, Intro to Modular Synths. Rip Kenny has been building his modular synth setup for a while now, and Tesko's been getting into building his own synth modules from kits. So this week we discuss why you may want to look into mod synths, what the workflow is like, some of the coolest units that they've used so far, and how much money and which types of gear you would even need to get started in modular synthesis. Our song of the week is a Rip Kenny tune, Dead or Alive, that you can hear behind me now. Go to the links below and run that up, please. You can support our sponsors, Dojo TV, that's free producer live stream classes from the Dojo Senseis, Yummy Strums, high quality guitar samples, loops, one-shots, racks, and more from our very own Tesko, and the weekly download where you can learn from Il Gates and his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 250 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. And of course, guest practices where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute. He's the best engineer we know, and your first class is free. Check out thehumanmusicpodcast.com for more episodes, socials, free sound pads, etc. Now let's get on into this episode, alright?
Hello, people of Earth. This is Tesko with Rip Kenny and Trap Jesus, and you're listening to the Human Music Podcast. Woo!
Human Music Podcast. I like it.
Yeah, cheers.
Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. Wham!
I like it.
Welcome back to the
Are we live?
Human Music Podcast.
Yeah.
What's up? What's up? What's up, my humans? Yeah, what are we talking about today? I want y'all to intro today. Tesko, you had a good idea for this podcast.
Yeah, so I was thinking, since our boy Rip over here has always got the beat boot machine set up right next to him. It's always looking mighty and impressive. We never get a chance to talk about it. I thought it'd be a great time not only for him to educate us on modular synthesis, but also put the conversation out into the world, and anybody that's thought of getting a modular, or even been curious or just has no clue what the fuck's going on, here's a chance now to get a nice intro to it, and we'll see where it takes it from there. Probably we'll dive into all kinds of topics after that.
Yeah, the genesis of this was Tesko is getting into basically building his own modules, and so we started talking about modular more. And there's a lot of good nuggets about just like sound design and like audio synthesis in general when you start talking about modular, and it helps you understand the physics of the sounds you're making a little bit better, and it makes you think about like the actual underlying principles a bit better, makes you a better sound designer in the digital world as well. So we figured might as well just run it up on the sound design. I mean, we're going to do a little bit of modular. We might dive into some sound design 101, but I mean, myself, I'm such a nerd for sound design, and I know these guys are too, at least some level. So figure we might as well dive into that a little bit.
Hell yeah. So first off, tell me a little bit about just kind of how you got started with modular, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the progression from then till now, because I'm sure it was way different. Process getting into it.
Yeah. So first of all, shouts out to the boy Aaron Wolfstacks.
Yeah,
he is the sole reason that any of this stuff next to me exists, because he sent me this Arturia rack and a few simple modules, like an oscillator, a comb filter, and a VCA. And
What's a VCA, I might ask?
Yes.
If I knew very little about modular, cough, cough, cough.
Yes. So a VCA is a voltage controlled amplifier. It's essentially a input output that controls volume at the most basic level. you can modulate a VCA with like an envelope, for instance, and that envelope will basically create a envelope shape controlling the volume, right? So if you wanted a pluck, you would run your oscillator into the VCA, and then you would run your envelope into the control voltage input on the VCA. And when that envelope receives a trigger, it sends that envelope to the VCA to create that shape of a pluck. For instance, if you had a short attack, medium decay, and whatever else. And then that would create like the tonal character of that pluck. But I mean, VCAs have a lot of different uses. That's kind of just the most basic one. You can use them to like, oh my god, I'm gonna get way too in depth here. I'm gonna make the statement and then we'll move on to something else because it'll probably get explained better. But you can use a VCA to modulate like a lot of other stuff, and like even modulate different control voltage sources or attenuate them or whatever. But yeah, so back to the origin story. Wolfstacks sent me the Arturia rack and 3 modules. One of them, which still lives in the system, that's the comb filter. And so yeah, it's basically, it's been something that I was interested in for a while because the sound design nerd in me has always wanted some sort of analog synth, but knowing my workflow, I always felt like something like a Moog or like a typical analog synth where it has a keyboard and you're just playing stuff on it, would lead to semi-expected sounds, right? Where you're making something similar to what you've made before, except warmer and bigger and, you know, more analog sounding, right? And if I was going to spend the money on an analog system, I wanted something that would produce much more unexpected and interesting results. Just, you know, like every sound designer's goal in life is to make sounds no one's heard before that are uniquely yours. And that is the big pull to modular for me, because I guarantee no one else in the world has exactly the same modules set up on 2 racks that I do. It's just there's way too many modules and there's way too many choices, and the choices you have within your own system are nearly infinite. And so that's really what excited me and was the why to do modular. And so, yeah, as I started building this thing, it was basically just like, at first I was kind of thinking like, okay, how do I use the modular to make cool sounds in a way that I know how to make cool sounds, right? I'm thinking of like my process and Serum and like, how can I do that with the modular? And then I realized like, that's also not the point. Like, why would I want to try and make sounds in a way that I'm already familiar with? I want to have some of the same tools because I know how to use them. You know, filters, distortions, chorus, reverb, EQs, sweepy EQs and stuff. But I also want stuff that's like different and unexpected that I could only get with a modular, because that's going to lead to better results, right? So then as I started building it, that kind of became the goal. And what I ended up with was three distortion units that there's absolutely no way you could ever do in like the digital world. Like, for instance, there's this one on the right that's a plasma drive, which literally has a tube with like plasma in it that, like, when electricity flows through it, it literally creates like a glowing like beam of electricity with like this blue hue. And A, it looks pretty cool.
What a fucking flex.
But B, it actually sounds sick. It's like a really unique like fuzz distortion. And for someone that likes that like really hard pressed, warm, but like not digital, but like crispy high end, it does that really well. And then just two other distortions that are just equally ridiculous in different ways, because that's kind of my favorite thing, is just taking anything and breaking it and seeing what it does and then backing it off to where it's usable.
So
then,
would you say the secret to good tone is just running it through like materials that are like typically like kind of unobtainable to the general public?
No, I mean, that plasma drive unit is a pretty strange example of that. It's just one that like when you explain it, you're like, oh wow, like I could never do that, you know? Like
it's like made from Rick's garage.
Yeah, literally. And it's just fun to fucking look at because it modulates like the incoming signal, like it's literally happening. It's not a visual representation. It's like literally happening. And the incoming signal like modifies how it looks, and so it's just like inspires having fun screwing with it. But yeah, generally when I'm choosing something for the modular, it's because it has a unique aspect to it like that I couldn't recreate in the digital world, or I don't know how to.
Yo, I just Googled it. This thing is crazy looking.
Yeah, they make a guitar pedal for it as well.
I just saw it too.
Yeah. For people who want to Google it at home, what's the name that you Googled?
It is literally called Game Changer.
Yeah, Game Changer Audio Plasma Drive.
All right. Look up the pictures, people.
Pretty wild. Damn, and they got a rack unit with a big ass plasma thing in it.
Mm-hmm.
What a flex, dude. I just want a wall of these in rack mount.
Well, trust me, one is more than enough. It mangles shit.
Has a xenon filling. I don't even know what that means. Sounds sick as fuck.
I think it's a gas.
Ah, yes. But like, that is xenon inside that makes it purple?
That I don't know.
Yeah.
Xenon is one of the noble gases, way on the right side of the periodic table. And that's about as far as I can take you.
So, besides your sick ass plasma array module, what is like, because that's something you'd get like a little like later on in your journey for somebody like that's like just starting out. What's like the bare essentials, and also you mentioned too like having to switch your workflow. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more like sequencer kind of oriented, right? Where you have these like arpeggiated kind of sequences or whatever that you run from one module that like generates your oscillators, or like how does that work?
Yeah, totally. So
that was multiple questions in a row.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start with the latter one that I remember, and then we can work backwards.
Okay.
So you are right in that it changes your workflow, and generally, if you're working from the modular into the computer, you are creating sequences like you just said. And the way that like typically the signal flow will work, and I guess a good place to start would be explaining one of the modules that at the time when I got it, I knew that I probably needed something like this, but didn't know why. And it's kind of one of the most interesting modules that modular has to offer, which is a random generator. So basically, if you set, okay, so let me back up
to
exactly. So in this lower case that I have, I take basically and connect it via USB to my computer, and it like as I'm recording, it has the clock from Ableton, so like it knows the tempo, and then you run that clock signal into the random generator, and it is then tempo synced, and You can change the rate at which it's creating these sequences. You can change the steps, the intervals between the steps, the distance between the steps, the bias on the high or low side of the steps, the rhythm that it generates, the swing of that rhythm, the probability that it returns to the same swing or generates a new one, the ability to lock a loop of the rhythm with different notes, a possibility to lock the notes with different rhythm, and a possibility to lock both of them in notes and rhythm. And then you can change the steps, the scale, like the whether it hard steps between like a major seventh or portamentos between, you know, all of the notes in the given scale or whatever. You can choose also the scale that it uses to generate the notes, right? And then that is run into the...
What module is that? What's that called?
It's called Marbles. Yeah, it's... this is the one module in here that I actually got from someone on Etsy that builds their own. I think it's by Mutable Instruments originally, but he built a clone of it and then put this different cool faceplate on it.
This
black.
one. I've seen this before.
Yeah, there's a bunch of random generators, but like this one, for the money and for what it did, it fit what I wanted to do, because I wanted to have something that I could actually like loop and become like usable very easily. And because of the scale function and everything, it does that. And so that will generate notes and or rhythms, and then I'll run that into one or more of my oscillators and then start screwing with them with the other stuff. But that's kind of the general workflow and going from my modular into the computer.
So to recap the first 15 minutes of the podcast, there is basically an infinite possibility of permutations that you can build your modular setup with, and then multiply that by another nearly infinite set of permutations of how you can patch your setup together and come up with all sorts of amazing, cool things randomly with plasma and all sorts of funness.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
And then the other part of that extremely long Tesko question was, let's back up and be like, okay, say one of our listeners, one of our humans is like, I don't have any modular. How do I begin before I get to random plasma generation?
Literally, what you need to begin, that I would say is like the bare minimum, is an oscillator, a VCA to control the volume, an envelope, which you can use to control the thing controlling the volume on the oscillator. And then, I mean, those are truly the only three things that you need. However, it won't be that much fun yet. And so then I would also add in pretty much any other unit that you could get creative, interesting results with to throw in the mix there to have fun and experiment with. Even if that thing is just like a random generator, like I said, so you can create just random sequences. You can control like the notes or the rhythm or whatever of that one oscillator playing on a pluck, and you can change the length of the pluck or whatever. You could make it a sustained note or whatnot, but it would make it a lot more fun to have something else. But the three mandatory minimums are an oscillator, a VCA, and an envelope, in my opinion. But yeah, you also need a rack. You need something to put these modules in.
And loose modules on your desk, not as useful, it sounds like.
Doesn't actually do anything. Actually,
you need a power source.
No power
source built in with the rack.
Yeah. What's that?
The power source is just built right into the rack, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say buy a bigger rack than you think you need originally, because rack space does
You're gonna
become
get
a
addicted.
premium, and you don't want to have to choose a module based on simply having to fit it into 4 screw slots or whatever.
And then how does one get that cool noise out of the machine into the digital world?
Yeah. So depending on whether or not you have a case that has outputs in it, or if you're just going straight from your VCA, then you would run that into, I have it into basically the line input in the back of my Apollo. And then you just record into Ableton. It's pretty simple. I mean, if you're going straight from your VCA and you don't have a case that has 1/4 inch outs, you'll need to get like a 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch basically adapter to run it into your interface. But that's basically it. The only thing to note additionally is that modular runs at like 0 dB, whereas like your guitar, pretty much anything else that's line level is like -20. And then like I think microphones are typically, hey bud, Bodhi's coming to join the discussion on modular. Bodhi is my cat. And vocals and mics and stuff run at like -40. So when you have a signal that's coming in at 0 dB, you just want to make sure that you have your wits about you and you don't have a track that's like at 0 dB coming in, because it's going to be 20 dBs louder than you would expect from like pretty much anything else running into the computer. Yeah.
Nice. Good to know.
Interesting. So yeah, how has your workflow kind of changed? How do you go about it now? Do you just do like long kind of resamples and scrub through it later? Or like how do you kind of set the vibe up for a track?
Yeah. Generally that is the most fun and fruitful way to use the modular, where
I love his paw just
I
reaching
know.
out.
Where you're not trying to stick a certain thing in anywhere. It's really great to like create a vibe or a mood. You know, you end up using notes and scales that you wouldn't normally. You can create like ridiculous sounds to then like put in songs later. Like generating super long mud pies is obviously like the easiest way to use it. But one thing that I have found to be uniquely challenging about the modular system is the pitch of things is based on the pitch that you set the oscillator to. And then, for instance, your random sequence generator will basically like move the note up and down in specified variations. But if you are screwing with the pitch of your oscillator and you don't land back exactly on a note, sometimes it's hard to basically bridge that or use it with other stuff that you're already playing on the specific note on a established scale in the computer, right? So one module that I've found to be like very like basically integral to my process nowadays is this thing called Scales by IntelliGel, which takes any variation in control voltage and actually like places it on an actual note and then outputs that note to then go to the oscillator to tell it what note to play. And so
modular auto tune. Gotcha.
Yeah, essentially, because it makes it way more usable. And also like I write a lot of stuff in like C# minor, for example, and I will just set the scales thing to like C# minor, and then I'll know that any random ridiculous experimentation combinations that I do within that are going to be in a scale that I use a lot. So that makes it a lot more usable. But the other thing that I've actually found is in the case that I have on the bottom, it has MIDI in, and so you can run MIDI from your computer up to 2 channels of MIDI. And so what I'll do frequently is if I have something in a song that's like cool, but I want like a more interesting sound or whatever, I'll run that 2 channels of MIDI into the modular and just start screwing with stuff. And then everything from there is essentially like basically just mud pieing on stuff that I know is usable or fits the melodic context of the song. It's basically the same process that I used to do with like figure out a bass line for the song and then run that bass line in a mud pie through Serum forever until I find something cool, except you get way more interesting results with the modular. But yeah.
Very cool. How long did it take you to fill out both those cases from like getting into it to final form?
Probably like 6 to 8 months.
Damn, you got in quick, sucked you in.
I did, honestly. For a bit there, it was like all my free time, like even at night, was like watching like tutorials and like modular gear reviews and stuff, trying to figure out cool stuff that would work for me and my workflow. And yeah.
So how often? Yeah,
I was gonna say at some point we should, like, Luke, if you want to intersperse some actual samples of stuff that I've made in the modular, so it like is more obvious the type of stuff you make with it. Because I feel like if you listen to this and you don't know what modular is, you're like, oh, you're just making bleeps and bloops. But I'll send you some stuff to leaf in here.
I might.
Okay.
Sounds like beep boop alien noises. Yeah. Sounds like you're in a spaceship.
Yeah, a spaceship that's crashing, but also might land. It's just but it is mostly crashing.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Star Trek movie.
So, how often do you use it, like at the beginning of your process versus the middle versus the end? Is it like hard to fit in later on?
Yeah, it's well for me. I usually like to separate my workflow anyways. Like if I'm writing a song, like I'll write all of the guitar parts first. And like at the expense of like writing a bunch of stuff that I won't use, I'll literally like make 10 guitar arps or different things. So I don't have to pick up the guitar again, just so like I'm staying like moving forwards in my workflow. And because if you know how it goes, you just start, you got to do the each process at a time to be efficient. So I usually like to do the same thing with the modular. If like a song starts with something that I wrote on the modular, it'll probably stay that way. I won't return to it. But for instance, like on the album when I was making a VIP of Forever, I took the chords from Forever and just like generated a bunch of really cool stuff in the modular, like halfway through working on it, that ended up being some of my favorite parts in that song. So usually it's sound design, nighttime sessions, creating ridiculous sounds, and then putting those into a song later. But it does sometimes pop up in the middle of a session if I'm looking for something more interesting that hasn't appeared yet.
Gotcha. Man, it's interesting stuff. There's so much that goes into it, so much that never made sense to me until I started looking more into it, like bias and DC offset and sag and shit like that.
Yeah.
It's like that you always see it on like the emulations of the analog stuff. But diving into it, seeing like what kind of limitations are we working with and what are they trying to emulate, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's been really insightful. But like, yeah, there's still so much about it that you don't think about. Like, I don't know. You always have 12 notes available to you. You don't really think about like I need a thing to like split that off into like proper notes and keep my tuning.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about modular that makes it cool. That is literally just the fact that it makes you think about what you're doing in a way different way. the best way that I could explain modular to someone is like, you know how in Serum you can route stuff pretty much anywhere. It's like that, except you can build your own Serum. So like you can choose what kind of oscillators you can put in there. You can put your own distortion, your own everything. And then also you can choose how to like create and generate the type of stuff. Like if Serum had the ability to like write arps and chords, or I mean, not really chords in the sense of modular, but like do a lot of other cool, interesting stuff. And you can choose what stuff you want to put in there and then route it anywhere. So it is more difficult in conceptualizing how to route the stuff and like, because it's so different from what you're normally used to, but it offers like a lot of really interesting creative choices that you couldn't do otherwise in a normal just synth setting.
Nice. And so what about like, if, you know, say, I mean, I know these modules aren't cheap, right?
Mhm.
You know, and, you know, there's like, you know, real circuitry and high quality gear that you're paying for and it's worth it. But like, what if, you know, you end up like, man, I don't really use this one, or I don't use it anymore, or it's not actually what I like. Like, you know, can you resell them? Do they hold their value?
Yeah. So one of the best parts about modular, and one of the only things for me that
Oh,
was
whoa.
Is
like,
it just me or you cutting out hard?
Oh yeah, you matrix deep there, buddy.
huh,
Start over. I don't know. It might just be the yeah.
Are we back?
Try again.
All right. So one of the things about modular for me, did it do it again? Is it still going?
I don't know.
Sounds like you got the randomizer on your voice right now.
Yeah.
How about now?
Sounds like you got auto-tuned, but you fucked the settings up.
That now is
No.
primo.
Yeah, I hope that's coming through on the podcast recording. Should be, because we're hearing it from there.
Beep boop.
Awesome.
Beep boop. Beep beep beep.
This is wonderful.
Resetting audio. Error.
Oh, I think you're back now.
Okay, good.
Hey,
So one of the things about modular
somebody sample
was one of the only reasons that I could justify spending the money to build this setup that I wanted is because the modules actually do hold their value so ridiculously well. Like a used module is like, say you bought like a super nice module for $500. You could sell it used tomorrow for $480. You could sell it used 3 years from now for $475. Like, they don't lose their value. And honestly, a lot of these, because they're like small boutique companies, which is why they cost a lot, also stop making stuff or can't make enough to like I would say half the modules I tried to buy were out of stock or back ordered or discontinued, and you couldn't find them anymore. And there's like this cult like following of people and that are trying to like get modules. And so like if you end up getting one that like is hard to find, like you can sell it for considerably more than you paid for it, right? So there's actually a couple modules in here that like I could probably, like right now, I haven't checked lately, but I could sell for like double what I paid for them. Not that I would, but it's something to think about, because it is an investment in your music career, that it's not like it devalues and you just like throw it away. Like some plugins that I've bought that I've used twice didn't become integral to my workflow, and just a waste of money. And you can't sell a plugin to someone. So that is definitely one thing that is beneficial about modular, although it is expensive, and think about spending that money before you do, because like you probably also won't sell it because you're going to want to use it in the future. So like definitely consider the investment before doing it. But for someone that's like such a sound design nerd like myself, like I love the thing.
So what do you think is like reasonably the cheapest you get started for?
I have no idea. What,
like, is $1,000 fair? Is that too much?
$1,000 is definitely fair.
Okay. to like
And-
comfortably buy what you want, the essentials.
Okay, so let me just do this in my head. Say a rack is $250, and then you could get an oscillator for $1,000 is more than enough.
Pre-tax.
Pre-tax, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like ultimately the fact that you can create an unlimited combination of stuff that you want and land on more interesting results that you would never create in the computer and break out of the general established workflow that you just always repeat in the computer is worth more than enough for me. And yeah, it also helps you. We never got to sound design 101, but it's important to note learning how to use a modular synth will teach you so much about the hows and whys of sound design and what's actually going on that you'll better understand the things that you're doing in the digital sphere after you start messing with the modular as well.
How do you feel about your setup? Are you like
I'm happy with I feel like I haven't
not
even,
looking at no more modules?
No. Like I need to explore the depths of the stuff that I've put in here already. Like there's already been a bunch of times where I'm like, holy shit, like I didn't know that could come out of this, and I'm sure there'll be many, many more. And yeah, I don't feel like I need anything else. I'm sure if I started looking around, I could find something that I want, but I have no more space. And buying
The
a
story
rack
has a happy ending,
Yeah.
after all.
it does.
Well, hell yeah. Well, shit. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good insight into the topic. I don't know. Is there anything you boys would like to add? Or should we keep this one pretty bite-sized intro to modular?
I think bite size is nice on this one. I know Tesko's got to teach a production lesson coming up here, and
Yeah. And I would love if anyone, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that just I didn't even realize I didn't explain well, or a bunch of questions that popped up that we didn't answer. If you have any questions about modular or just sound design and how this stuff works, drop them wherever you're listening, unless it's Spotify because you can't drop comments.
yeah,
So drop 'em
hit
on
us on the
YouTube.
socials and the YouTube comments. We always love some ideas for the next episode or to revisit a topic and go in depth. Hit us up at The Human Music Podcast or at Human Music Pod on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe next week we could talk about your favorite noble gas for distortion.
Exactly. I think for the podcast outro, I have a sound that I'm going to send you from this.
Okay.
Well,
All right, humans. Peace.
till next time.
And peace among worlds. All right, humans. Thank you so much for being here with us yet again. And you can go to thehumanmusicpodcast.com for more episodes, socials, free sound packs, etc. You can support our sponsors like Dojo TV, where you can get free producer live stream classes from the Producer Dojo Senseis. Links down below. And Yummy Strums, where you can get high quality guitar samples, loops, one-shots, racks, and more from our very own Tesko, and instantly level up your productions with these top quality sounds. That's yummystrums.com, link down below. The weekly download, where you can learn from Il Gates and his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 250 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. Link down below. And guest practices, where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute, the best engineer we know, and your first class is free. Link down below. Yo, anytime you click on those links, I just want to let you know that supports us directly, and it supports products we believe in and use ourselves. And one last time, that song of the week you're bumping behind me right now is Rip Kenny's Dead or Alive. Go run that up for your boy Rip Kenny, giving you all this good advice about modular. All right, y'all. Till next week. Peace. And peace among worlds. I like it.